Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone, and welcome to our podcast, Neurodiversity from the Inside Out, the future of our children. My name is Uzma, and I'm thrilled to be your host for this important conversation. Today, we'll be looking at helping your child and yourself thrive by embracing uniqueness. You and your child are meant to be more than average. This episode dives into how to celebrate your family's individuality, moving beyond what's normal to discover talents, passions, and a life path that feels right for you. We'll share how to approach this journey as an adventure to enjoy together, without the pressure to have it all figured out. To guide us through this conversation, we're incredibly fortunate to have with us Peggy Ployhar. Peggy is a founder and CEO of SPED Homeschool, the main host of Empowering Homeschool Conversations, a popular live broadcast and podcast that addresses relevant issues related to homeschooling diverse learners, a breast cancer survivor, the owner of Eternal Aerial Arts, and an aerial arts instructor and performer. She and her husband Doug live in League City, Texas, and after 19 years of homeschooling, have now graduated all three of their children from their homeschool. Welcome, Peggy. We are honored to have you here today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited about our conversation today.
I absolutely, yes, me too. I love the topic, and I really want to dive into, the first question. And I guess the question is pretty much on behalf of what I feel parents will have, to ask. What does it truly mean to break away from societal norms?
Mm. So yeah, that I discovered in my own life. I was raised to basically follow all the steps because
Mhm.
my dad told me, well, if you do this and this and this, then you'll succeed. And in his generation, I think that worked.
Mhm.
And but unfortunately, things have changed.
Yeah.
And if you are a cookie cutter, follow the rules type of person, you aren't as valuable in our society for the work and really to find purpose in your life. And I think a lot of his generation just went through and they just did what they were told and kind of just were products of the industrial age, and our society has completely changed. And so I found, I was doing those things, being, you know feeling like, okay, this is supposed to work, this is supposed to be like the ultimate. I've now graduated from college, I've got this incredible job, and what is missing? you know
Mhm.
and it seemed like I was always pursuing. And so uniqueness is trying to figure out from the inside out, how do I use what's inside of me to and be different than everyone else instead of trying to be the same. And my life has been transformed. Homeschooling really was a wake up call, not only for finding the uniqueness in my children, but it was also finding the uniqueness in myself. It was a
Mhm.
time of self discovery, and I'm a totally different person than I was when I started homeschooling my kids. I was a very rigid, follow the rules type of engineer. I didn't think I was creative at all. And I think I stuffed that down inside because I was told that that wasn't what was most valuable. The math scores that I got, the science scores, that was what was celebrated the most. And so I kind of pushed everything else aside. And I think we do the same things with our kids. We do the
Yeah.
same things with other people when we see things that they're excelling at, that the world says, well, that's valuable. That's going to make you money, or that's going to get you prestige. And but does it make them happy? Is it what fills them?
Mm.
And a lot of times we put that value on the money and the prestige, And in the end, we burn somebody out and they don't last very long, even if they do hit those things.
Yeah.
But over time, if you can hone in on those skills that are from within that bring joy, that they will bring funding, money, prestige. A lot of the times, maybe it's a longer lifetime.
Mm.
You see artists that, really weren't celebrated till they were really, in their 50s, 60s, because it took them that long to hone really who they were. And so we have to be willing to look at this as a journey with ourselves and our children to really dive into our uniqueness.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think I mean, we often put so much pressure on ourselves as parents to support our children when it comes to figuring out their uniqueness, right? Because
Right.
there's some passion, some skill they may have. But
Mhm.
do you think it's equally important that we do it for ourselves before
Oh, yes.
supporting our children?
I think alongside, if
Mm.
they're seeing that I mean, we all start at one place. Maybe you're further along in this discovery when, you have children.
Mm.
Maybe you're not. Maybe you're just kind of waking up and going, "Oh, there's something unique about me that I gotta
Yeah,
find." Um, and so, but what your children watching you be curious
yeah,
and try new things, it really will open up doors for them to say, this isn't a one-time thing. I figure out who I am and then, haha, now I can go on with my life. No, this is an ongoing process. This is what dad do. And so it's just what all adults do. They will translate it that way as
yeah,
you live by example.
yeah. I love that. Being an example, a role model, and doing it alongside your children is so
Mhm.
important. Yeah. And what do you think the most effective ways to identify a child's unique talent or talents, maybe?
Yeah. You got to try things.
Yeah.
And and I always tell parents, don't sign up for things for a really long span of time.
Hmm.
Try something short, because if your child starts doing something and they don't like it, forcing them to finish what they've started will actually work against you. And so do trial classes, call up places and say, is there a way we could stop in and watch?
Hmm.
Or do you have like a one-time class where we can try it out? Or even just try a private lesson if they don't offer that. It's much more worth that to see if they like it than to be committed for a whole semester to something that they resent at the end.
Yeah.
And
And
plus,
how
you're
can,
gonna try a whole lot more things if you
yeah,
if you only try things here and there too. Yeah,
absolutely. No, I agree. Absolutely. And how do you think parents can nurture that over time? You know, if they have figured out that this child has a certain strength, how do you think they
right.
can nurture that over time?
Sometimes just asking other people lots of questions, just people that you say, I see this in my child. What are some activities we could do? Or if you know somebody that has an interest, just asking them to be able to share with your child. Going out and, or even asking your child when you're out and about, a lot of times I was with my kids. Does that look interesting to you? And
Yeah.
sometimes they'll say, yeah, or something. No, not really. Um, and so just exploring that, or even trying things in your home, like crafts. My daughter did tons of different kinds of like handcrafts. So sewing, crocheting, knitting, um, a variety of things. Some of them stuck, some of them didn't. We have knitting needles now that never get used. But I mean, that's a small expense. But then later she did pull them out and she actually knit an entire sweater.
Mm.
And then they went back again to where they were.
Yeah.
But giving them that ability to kind of feel free to explore without the demand of output all of the time,
Yeah.
because that's not when we really figure out what we like, is if we're forced to show results. We're in a mode of discovery, and when you're discovering, it just should be joyful
Yeah.
and fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And that takes me to my next question, I guess. When we we don't allow that space or opportunity for a child to figure it out, and then to support them through that passion or the interest. Do you think, there's going to be that suppression, and if there is, how do we as parents, like, what are the indicators?
Yeah. Um, their stress levels will go up a lot because your children want to please you. And I think we forget that. They know, even if we don't say, sorry, I've got a hair in my face. They know, even if we don't say, that we have certain expectations of them.
Yeah.
We want them to excel, and they feel that pressure. If instead we want them to find joyful things to do in their lives and we set our sights on that instead, they're going to know I'm I'm going to seek some joy. And
Yeah.
we're going to try to discover things about me, and that's a good thing, and that I'm different, and that I do things that are unique, that are different than everybody else, and that's what my parents value about me. And we kind of build that culture within our families, that we want to know the best version of you.
Yeah.
And so that's going to look different for every. I mean, my kids are so widely different. My oldest has that engineering mindset, and he he just loved, all of the subjects, math and science and all those things, and building things. And my middle one is super creative. He taught himself to play two different types of guitars, started a podcast. He's just a very creative type person. And my daughter is one of those where she's kind of creative too, but more in the like hands-on type things, and creating things, and artsy, but very organized too. So, but
Oh, very different.
over time, we've figured those things out about each of them, and valued that uniqueness, and even talked about it as a family, like, this is something you do really good at. And showing them, not everybody's made that way. It's like, I probably need some help in that area.
Yeah.
And so how can we, use that gift within our family too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can only imagine the level of confidence, that would actually, you would notice that going up if
Yeah.
you're acknowledging, supporting, befriending and communicating with them. So I can
Hmm.
imagine the self-esteem for that child.
Right.
But how do you think parents can, like, if we go back to the beginning, how do you think parents can communicate, this with their children and validate their interests? Because sometimes I feel we want our children to be a certain way because that's what we want. But how
Right.
do we validate what they're interested in and then
Yeah.
supporting them through that journey?
Hmm. Yeah, it's hard because, yeah, like you said, that we have certain things we want for our kids. We want to see them succeed, and then they pick things, and we're like, seriously? A good example is my daughter. My daughter is an incredible artist, and I really, she designs clothes. She has had a pair of shoes she designed, actually produced in Europe and sold on like a niche, like,
Wow.
market site. Um, and then she dropped out of it, and then she thought, "Well, I wanna be a tattoo artist." And I was
Mm.
like, "Okay." And so we just kinda walked alongside her and said, "Well, then what do you need to do to be prepared for this?" Do some research, and just to walk alongside that. Over time, she realized, because of her physical disability, that she can't, she holding a tattoo or gun would not work for her. She
Mm.
has EDS like I do, and has a lot of pain issues. And so then we just went on another thing of self-discovery. And this was
Mm.
when she actually had graduated already from high school. And she took a gap year, worked in retail. And at that point, the store that she worked at when she was 18, they redid their whole cosmetic section. And at 18, they put her in charge of redoing that whole part of the store, because they saw in her the ability to do that, and it put her on a whole new track. But if we would have said, you have to go to college, this is your next step,
Mm,
this is what's going to help you, she would have never really discovered that gift within her.
mhm.
And that caused her actually to go to college, because she's like, I love organizing things. I love, being able to label stuff. I mean, her room would never tell you that this is the truth. But she's actually going now to get her degree and then follow up with a master's degree in archival science to
Wow.
work in archives. But it was a process of us saying, we're going to walk alongside you. We're going to figure this, what you are most gifted at, even if it maybe is a decision that we think is a little sketchy or
Yeah,
maybe not the right fit for you. But over time, they will figure it out. And if they're in a supportive environment where they can fall back when it doesn't work out, it's much better than saying, well, that was the decision you made, so now you're
yeah,
gonna have to stick with it. That's not helping them in any way. But we
yeah,
can do that throughout their life. Our kids are gonna say, I had one child that wanted to do, no, we've done a lot of things. Um, we've we've done, archery and martial arts, and got involved in speech and debate, and 4 times.
yeah,
But it was like, okay, so what did you learn from this? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? And then maybe what can we choose next to participate in or to get involved in that would use some of the things you liked from this, and then pick another activity or
yeah,
something else, instead of just like, well, that failed, and so now we're going to pull back in and stay isolated, or maybe cut out all sports and say, well, sports aren't for you, instead of, well, let's try a different sport, or try something that is active, that maybe doesn't involve a ball or
yeah.
so yeah, there's just so many things out there for our kids to discover, and the more things that they try, the more that they're going to know about themselves.
Absolutely. So I think creating the opportunities for our children,
Yes.
supporting
Mhm.
them through their decision making, and then, I mean, it's internally, okay, in the home environment, we have that. Okay, you've mentioned supporting them, discovering,
Yep.
encouraging. But what about the external noises? Not just for parents, but for the children,
Right.
right? They're
Mhm.
gonna they're gonna feel maybe, well, this isn't good enough because somebody else may, bully them for that, I guess.
Right.
So
Oh,
what would
yeah.
happen then? How could we give our children that confidence and say, this is your interest? You got
Yeah.
this.
I think, we read a lot of biographies when
Mm,
my kids were younger, and a lot of people that have found success in their lives really struggled when they were younger. And it took that time of self-discovery. A great story is somebody who overcomes, and our kids need to realize that overcoming is a part of a great story and a
yeah,
part of a great outcome. And so the more that we expose our kids to other people in real life, instead of just these short 30-second videos of somebody being successful overnight, that
yeah,
just doesn't happen, and then they disappear on top of it too. It's not a long lasting success. But we have to build that endurance, we have to build that perseverance, and we don't talk about that anymore. And but a really good, good biographies, we read those a lot in homeschooling, really help our kids to see what life really is about, and that you have to work through these things, you have to struggle through them,
yeah,
and it's worth that.
yeah, absolutely. That makes so much sense now because, if we look at it for the long term,
Mhm.
what are the benefits, long-term benefits when you're celebrating your child's individuality or their interests or their passions? It's really
Mhm.
looking at the journey, the process of how to get there.
Yes.
Just because you like something, that doesn't mean you're going to not struggle or face challenges on the way. I'm
Right.
sure you will. And it's really
Mhm.
kind of reinforcing that and supporting them, which makes, yeah, absolutely makes so much sense. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow, this is a deep topic. I feel it's a very deep topic because passion. I mean, going back to, for example, neurodiverse children, a lot. I'm not going to say every neurodiverse child, but majority do have an interest. They have a
Oh, they
passion
do.
for
Yeah.
something, right? So
Yeah.
how
And if
do we?
they don't, then it's just they haven't discovered it yet.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And there's times where they are so fixated on that topic,
Yeah.
are so passionate about that
Mhm.
particular topic. How do we now balance it? So we've talked about interest, we've talked about the passion, we talked about supporting them, but what about balancing it between not just the interest, but also other things, like the conversations they may have with their peers, for example, of, family, even going, they might be interested in dance, for example, but how do we take away that moment and say, okay, now it's time for academics? How do we
Right. Yeah.
balance?
Well, and a lot of parents, because you're activating a larger part of the brain when it's built around interest, they've found a lot of success in teaching towards interests for other subjects. So let's take dance, for example. How can we build physics
Mm,
into dance? How can we build nutrition into dance? How can we build reading into dance? There's
yeah.
lots of great biographies. How can we start writing about dance?
Mm,
And so you can build every subject around their interest. And not only will that help them to focus better, but it also will broaden their understanding of their interest. And
mm,
so over time, they may find a venue in that is actually something that they could be employed in
mm.
or that they could do for a career.
Yeah.
But and so that ended up being what my oldest son did, is he loved building, and
Mm,
he went to welding school, and so he learned how to weld, and then he came back, he said, I don't think I can work in that population." It was a rough community, and so then he went to college, but he still loved building, so he was always building something on the side. I still give him Legos for Christmas, he's almost 28, um, but he started 3D printing as well
mm,
and designing things on that while he was in college. And now as a biomedical engineer, he actually custom designs things that are for 3D printing that surgeons use to put into people's jaws and skulls as replacement pieces. And
wow.
he designs them to fit the surgeon's specifications. He puts, where the screw holes are going to be, all of that. And then they print them out in titanium and send them around the world.
It's amazing.
So, but had he said, "Oh, I don't have time for my hobbies. I've got to really focus on school," all of those things, he would have never gotten that job because it was his hobby that
Mm.
actually piqued the interest of the company that hired him, that saw that he also knew how to 3D print because it wasn't something they taught in college.
That's a wonderful success story. And I think that really gives parents the confidence to say, well, we can do this too. Because
Yeah.
I think with homeschooling, we often worry about ticking. I mean, we say we're not ticking the boxes, but sometimes we have that comparison to school. And we're like,
Yeah.
okay, we need to tick the boxes. They need to get through this subject this year or that subject and various topics that we need to cover. And we don't look beyond sometimes the academics because we feel we need to get through this. And sometimes we're just so pressured with time and responsibilities that we are just doing the bare minimum, right?
Mhm.
So if
Oh,
for example in
absolutely.
your story, the passion, the hobby that he had led him to where he is today, we need to allow the opportunity and the
Yes.
time for them
Yeah.
to walk away from certain tasks in the day, I guess, to do that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
or to make them shorter. Our science, I didn't do a very, really intense, like, a lot of homeschoolers focus on, "Oh, my child's gonna go to college, so we're gonna do, this really rigorous science program." No, I gave my kids videos that had labs with them, but it was fun, it was engaging, and it continued to hold their interest. And my son still did well in college at all of those college level, classes because he understood the what the courses that I used, they, um they gave him a basic understanding of how things worked. And so
Yeah.
it was very application oriented. It was less theoretical. But then when he went into using the theoretical, he actually understood more than his fellow classmates because he knew how it was applied.
Yeah.
And we forget how valuable that is. That we can teach the theoretical, but if it's just a bunch of formulas, it's not going to go very far.
No, absolutely. Well, I mean, you've shared so many success stories from your homeschooling journey, and that encourages, I'm sure, many of our listeners today. But what advice would you give parents who are afraid to step outside conventional paths?
Just try it. Try,
Yeah.
small things. You don't have to like throw out all the curriculum right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
we
exactly.
didn't, but but take those little steps to find something fun, to do learning a little different. See how it goes, and it reflected a lot on my teaching style too. I'm kind of a very hands-on type of person myself anyways. And I discovered that more and more as I was teaching my kids, just who I was as a teacher, who I was as a person, and just how much I enjoyed it. I
Yeah.
felt like when I was teaching out of books that I was somebody else's puppet. And when
Mm,
I was able to be given a list of, "Here's all the materials you need, and now go for it."
mm.
That's what I loved. I'm the type of person that never follows the recipe, give me a list of ingredients and I'll figure out how to put it together.
Yeah. More improvised it.
So
Yeah.
so my homeschooling with my kids became, more of who I was as a teacher versus what everybody told me that I'd need to become. And as I released that, um, it became easier to teach, it became more joyful, and then we started that path of self-discovery for all of us.
Yeah. That's amazing. I mean that's yeah, absolutely. Because I feel like parents do have that fear of letting go somewhat, right? Of us, and going back
Right,
to the first question, the societal expectations that we have and the societal pressure that we have. But if we really hone into what works for us, what works for our children, and that
yeah,
self-discovery and appreciating and valuing our passion,
mhm,
I do feel like we can step away from the conventional paths and really make a huge difference. And you've shared that, about your child who now has a great and a wonderful, I'm sure, amazing job.
mhm,
And that gives many parents hope because we feel that at the end we want our children to be independent.
right,
Neurotypical or neurodivergent, we want them to be independent. We want them to be
mhm,
self-sufficient. And that way, if we really put that, I guess, pressure on them to do something they don't enjoy, we're not going to do it. But if we
right.
spend time, with them and encouraging them through their passions, absolutely we will be. Yeah.
And you're surprised by what they do because they have that confidence.
Yeah.
My son, now he's engaged. I mean, this is the child that got kicked out of school when he was 5. He was punching holes through my walls, and I thought he was gonna end up in a group home. That was
Mm,
the trajectory that I saw him headed on so many years ago. And now to see him, planning on his wedding and him communicating with me to talk to his fiance and just the he just continues to grow and to learn, and it's because he's has that confidence
mm,
that we believe in him, we're there for him, but also that he has the ability to do these things. And yeah, I'm just over the moon
yeah.
happy with how he's been doing. And yeah.
That's amazing. And I think it's so important to listen to these success stories because we need hope. We as parents, who have younger children, we do, sometimes worry about what does their future look like? What can
Right.
we do to support them? And we have that internal worry that
Mhm.
really does eat parents up,
It
how are
does.
they going to
Yeah.
even do things when we're gone? How are they going to even get to that level of independence? But listening to your story, Peggy, today has given us that hope. And I really, I pray and I wish that every parent follows the child's lead. Our children are all very, very unique, all very different. And if we can just support them and encourage them with their interests, we'll have successful stories just like you. One day we could be sitting here
Absolutely.
sharing our stories.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Peggy, for sharing your insights today.
Absolutely.
Your experiences and your expertise has been invaluable for our listeners. So really appreciate it. And that's all for today's episode. We appreciate your time and look forward to exploring more topics with you soon. Thank you.